Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our fourth virtual Wednesday. I almost said first Friday. And Kevin Cook is going to be our host this morning, and he is going to welcome you all as well and start us off this morning. Kevin, take it away.
Thanks, JV, and thanks everybody for joining our virtual Winter Wednesday meeting about marketing during some of the most difficult of times. I want to thank some of our panel experts that are joining this morning. We have Christine Manello from Foster Supply Hospitality, Chief Revenue Officer, and then Emily Casey, Director of Marketing from Bethel Woods. My name's Kevin Cook. My wife and I own Upstream Wine and Spirits and Sunshine Colony Wine Bar in Livingston Manor. So I probably bring more of a small business perspective to this. We were chatting earlier before we officially got started that marketing is a very inexact science in the best of times. And it's certainly not an exact science right now. So I've tried to prioritize our time here as being a lot of Q&A, because I think that might be the most fruitful part. We're going to kind of start with Q&A with our experts and then open it up to everybody. So Jamie,
excuse me, Kevin, just for 1 minute, I'd like to also welcome Danielle from Superfine Social, amazing marketing and social media marketing guru. So she's also part of our panel of experts today joining us.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to share a screen here. I'm put together some data. It's kind of a wide swath of data because there is no clear, one-stop deck for how we're responding to the pandemic. It looks back, it looks at the last year, and it looks at where consumer trends and marketing trends are going in the year forward. It's a little disparate, but I hope you'll get some key takeaways from it. Let me just go full screen here. All right. So we definitely didn't see this coming. I think we can all agree on that. In March and April of 2020, e-commerce as a portion of retail sales saw 10 years of growth in 2 months with no significant signs of receding. Probably not shocking that e-commerce grew that much in the last year. I'm sure we all saw that, but probably the enormity is pretty incredible. We're probably 5 to 10 years ahead of trend, and it looks like that trend is going to stay. Restaurant digital orders, which were growing prior to the pandemic, increased by 19% in January, so pre-pandemic, and it was 145% growth in December. Industries are saying that digital ordering is still going to be very popular, much more so than if this had never happened. 75% of consumers have tried new brands in 2020. I think this can be a good thing. We're finding out that since people were relying on digital so much, they actually might have crossed their loyalty to their usual brands because they were experiencing brands. I think we can all benefit from that, but I think it's something to look out for when we think about customer loyalty. 70% of consumers said they plan to dress more casually when they return to work. I mean, this is kind of just a throwaway anecdote, but it just shows that people's behaviors are changing in ways that we might not be thinking. So it's good to keep an eye on all the little micro changes that maybe make a permanent dent after this is over. Most importantly, searches for bird food increased by 450% in spring of 2020. Again, these are just the crazy things that come out of these times, but then all of a sudden we might have a bigger birding population. So kind of a joke, but kind of illustrates the point that we didn't see this coming and trends are changing. Something's wrong with my deck. Here we go. I just did a leisure travel snapshot. Obviously, Sullivan County is greatly affected by tourism, second homeowners, et cetera. So this is just kind of the state of things at the moment based on current surveys. Pre-pandemic, 34% of Americans planned on traveling for leisure in 2020. 45% plan on traveling in 2021. So something to be optimistic about. In the next 12 months, 42% of travelers intend to spend more money than the previous year, while 41% plan on spending about the same. So again, consumers are telling us that their spending will be up. Pre-pandemic, 70% of people considered travel spending to be a high priority. After hitting a mid-pandemic low of 35.6%, that number is now risen to 52%. I think with some hopeful signs on the horizon regarding vaccines, more testing, that we're likely to see that number grow. Please, anyone stop me if you have a quick question. I don't want to put everyone to sleep this morning. 52% of travelers plan on visiting small towns, villages, rural destinations at least once in 2021. That's a 5-year high from the survey I'm quoting. What we're seeing there is there are people that feel a little bit more comfortable about traveling in 2021, but maybe not too comfortable. Not everyone's eager to go to a big town, a big city. They're still thinking rural. They'll dip their toes back in the water. So, that's a good sign for an area like ours. 53% of travelers would feel guilty about traveling right now. It's something to keep in mind with your communications. That doesn't mean they're not going to travel, but they're doing it with some trepidation. This is a really interesting graph, and we'll put this all on our website connected to the video, and you can see where I cited these sources from. But this is how travel destinations could best reach you with their messaging right now. So we see at the top that it's traditional digital communications like websites, email, etc. But when we adjust for disaggregating social media, you'll see that social media is actually the best way to message people right now. That number, as we know, always continues to grow. So that's not changing. And if anything, it's growing more quickly now during the pandemic. Even things like TikTok, 6.6% growth. That's not significant, but a couple of years ago, that would have been 0. So we're seeing even more functioning things coming out of platforms like TikTok. So where do we think this is all leading? Again, these are just based on a number of different surveys that I culled from a number, hopefully reputable places. Small business owners cite their top concerns for 2021 is securing new customers, lingering economic impacts, and lower sales. I think we can all understand where that's coming from. However, 72% of small business owners report feeling optimistic, while only 9% report feeling pessimistic. I think that's a very telling stat. I think that is coming from a lot of anecdotal data from small business owners, that their consumers still seem to be supporting them, are excited for the years ahead, and hopefully we're going to get a post-pandemic bump. I found this interesting, that of the 100% of people that were polled, 27% of respondents had started a new small business during the pandemic. Maybe people were taking a risk during a risky time, or people maybe had lost their previous job and started something new. So I thought that was really actually inspiring. And I'm guessing that happened in our county. 69% of small business owners recognize the importance of an increased online presence during the pandemic. Seems pretty obvious, but the numbers bore that out. 54% of owners reported a boost in website traffic since the beginning of quarantines. 49% of small business owners with online stores reported a boost in sales, which is pretty incredible, not just to toe the line, but to actually have an increase. Only a quarter reported a decrease in sales. Conversely, 61% of those with brick and mortar stores saw a decrease in sales. That's brick and mortar only. 75% of small business owners predict their online sales will increase in 2021. So we're hearing that from the consumer, the trend forecasters, and business owners themselves. I found this very interesting, and I think affects a lot of our day-to-days up here in small businesses and bigger businesses. 79% of consumers intend to continue or increase their usage of self-checkout in retail after COVID-19. I think this probably has broader implications. Not only did people find out that self-checkout was more convenient and they got used to it, and it's probably something they want to continue to practice, people are saying that they are going to be more focused on hygiene going forward. This doesn't mean that people are going to think the pandemic is here to stay, but they're going to be more aware of their health and safety within a communal environment. So some of the adjustments we've made and some of the ways we've been speaking to our clients and consumers a little differently may be here to stay. This just shows how many different industries are doing purchasing online, and everything from medicine to apparel to tobacco, consumer electronics. And this is where consumers say they're going to continue to purchase from in the future. People really liked it. I think it became more convenient. I noticed a lot of brands had kind of difficult checkout systems, and they adjusted very quickly due to the panic and the need to innovate quickly. So we're guessing that that's going to continue in a major way. And again, back to that low touch activities, people really liked it. I think, the buy online, pick up at store, people just found that was really convenient. Self-checkout in store is very convenient, but also there could be a lingering safety conversation as we go forward. And that's that. I'll stop the share. So I just rambled on with a lot of statistics that are hard to all take in at once, but hopefully that painted some pretty broad strokes. Are there any questions about anything that I brought up there? All right. So then I'm going to just kind of, with our panel of experts, just shoot some questions. I think I'll direct them to one each, and then experts feel free to chime in as I ask these questions. Christine, we can start with you. What were the clearest challenges to marketing and communications when COVID-19 hit for Foster Supply? I think you guys have a very interesting company because you're doing a lot in hospitality, a lot in food. So you check a lot of boxes that we're all concerned about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thanks again for having me. I think one of our main focuses with everyone else, was really to make sure that we were communicating and executing our health and safety guidelines. It's funny, people were touting housekeeping as an amenity now, and we all know that that's something we all do, right? But it was something that you needed to kind of put out in the forefront, which is not something that, you typically market about, right? So we needed to make sure that we communicated that. First and foremost, we were being completely transparent with our guests. And also just making sure our teams we were getting feedback from on the ground as well, what's working, what's not working, and just being able to shift as we need to, as guidelines, continue to get updated, just making sure our teams could kind of move pretty quickly in real time, and at the same time, while of course we wanted the guests in the restaurants, when we were mainly just doing takeout, and by the time we were ready to open, the restaurants and the hotels, as much as we want to, communicate all of the must-dos, right? The masks, the hand sanitizer, all of those things, social distancing. We also wanted to make it somewhat, fun too, as fun as it could be, right? I think we definitely asked ourselves, how do we welcome guests back in a way that they not only feel safe, but also, we're not trying to gaslight anyone, but we also want them to feel some sort of, escape while they're here, and maybe just take a breath, and, go outside and play, and just take a minute away from the Zooms and the, their phones and, any screen, because with, everyone is accessible 24/7. I think this pandemic really made that even more so, with, I think people's calendars are even more so booked now than they were when we were all not in the, we're not all in offices, but, quote unquote offices. The other last thing I'll note too is it's important to note that not only the pandemic was going on, but, and obviously these things are not over yet, but the country was going through social unrest. So I think from our standpoint, from a tactical marketing standpoint, we basically stopped all paid advertising. I think for us, we wanted to give space to the larger conversations and things that just felt so much bigger than us, and us, telling you to get takeout just didn't feel like the appropriate thing to be talking about at the time. So, that's kind of how we shifted and focused our efforts, throughout the summer.
That's a really good point. I didn't underscore this we were also going through major social unrest. Politics were obviously very divisive. So, I mean, you could just really pile on how difficult it is at all levels of communication from any brand to talk right now. Danielle and Emily, just because this is kind of the big question, I think that a lot of us want to understand, what did you see that you needed to shift, and what did you see other people need to shift?
Emily, you go ahead. You go first.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I don't know how I feel about being called an expert, but I'm really happy to be here and share our experience. And I definitely agree with all that Christine said. I mean, it was really just so much uncertainty and being asked questions that we didn't have the answers to, you know, like, when are you opening? What's the concert season? And constantly trying to come up with solutions and being flexible and being transparent, but being compassionate through that all in our communications. And I just want to kind of latch on to two other things Christine said. With our signage and with planning our visit, we did make sure that everything was clear, but we also had a lot of fun with it. We made a campaign that said spread peace and love, not COVID-19. We said lose the handshakes, throw up a peace sign. And I think our guests really appreciated that because they knew what they were anticipating, but also it had a direct correlation to our brand and our history. So when we were able to reopen the museum, it was a campaign that we launched and had fun and success with. And then also to go off what Christine said about the social unrest and the political turmoil, it was really challenging for us. And I think in the past, you always had time to make a statement or talk about it internally and figure out how you wanted.
What time is it, Luke?
But for brands and media managers, you were
What?
kind of forced just to react
All right. Get on
and
it.
be compassionate and make a statement or be quiet. And that's always challenging in a conversation. I think Kevin mentioned it as well. So many things were accelerated because of working from home and shifting to virtual programming and just the social media evolution in itself. So I think we're still in the middle of that with Apple's privacy changing, and you know, there's marketing is constantly changing. We're forced to evolve, but we're in it. So I think that's enough for me for now. I'm sure I have more things throughout, but Danielle, take it away.
I think you ladies did a beautiful job of explaining what everybody is going through. I just, you know, it's not specific to Foster Supply. It's not specific to Bethel Woods. And I really feel like our Sullivan County businesses stepped up to the plate very quickly and did what they needed to do. It wasn't easy for some of them, but they made it through. And just like Emily just said, marketing is always changing. It's been always changing. Before COVID, it was changing. And we are definitely still in the middle of it. And I think if I was to offer any one solid piece of advice, it is you have to bring your business into the digital age, and not everybody is there yet. And that is not just social media, that is website, that is email. You have to have these different touch points because people want to be communicated with, and being clear. I think that would be the other thing that I would throw out there, is to be really, really clear with your hours, with your policies and procedures, because an informed person feels a whole lot better than someone who is left to make up stories and have to think about answering their own questions and running up against that wall of like, what is this going to be like? What is this experience going to be like for me? So I'm so proud of all of our small businesses, because we are, I think, one of the lucky communities. I do definitely feel that way. Maybe not for every business, but as a whole, I think Sullivan County has held on pretty tight.
Thanks, Danielle. I think you brought up a very good point that I would bring up from my businesses, which was having to be clear, because the goalposts kept moving constantly. Still do a bit, maybe not as much as May of last year, but our protocols kept changing, our hours kept changing, and we got behind. We were trying to, I think, ensure health and safety, maybe overusing our social media channels too much, losing a little bit of engagement there, and then forgetting to put the hours up on Google. So I think that probably still will continue, because as we get into a portion of the population is vaccinated, but some aren't, and that'll adjust some things. Some things will come back to normal. They'll do weird percentages on how many people are allowed in a store or a restaurant. I think that's a great piece of advice, because that's something I wish I had done better looking back. And then Danielle, to follow up with you, have people, do you think in social media that there was less engagement over time? Or were you finding that people were relying on more to that community feel, particularly when it came to their loyalty to their brands and wanting to like at least support them or be in contact with them?
Yeah, I think people aren't necessarily engaging, but just because somebody isn't engaging with what we think engaging is doesn't mean they're not engaging, right? So kind of think of engaging as commenting and sharing, and well, sharing is a huge part of that. But I think that people are so overwhelmed by what has been happening that the spirit of engagement isn't there, right? But that doesn't mean they're not going and getting that information and still ordering takeout or planning that weekend away. We've done all of these things, but I think it's harder to be in that positive mindset of like, oh, this is so cool. This looks so cute. Can't wait to come see you people, when it's like, life is doom and gloom. You don't know what's going to happen next. And you're like, I just need takeout. Like, just feed my family tonight. So I think that it's going to definitely shift again, right? Like, it's winter. It's still like, everybody's sick of winter now. So I think as we go into spring and the more people get vaccinated and more things that open up, I think that engagement is going to flip again, and it is going to feel like it's there. It definitely felt like it dropped off for sure, but I don't think that people weren't using it. I think they just weren't, in the spirit of like, let me be happy about this. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's good to hear, because I think our cute likes went down, but when we put up a protocol, people seem to know it when they came to one of our establishments. So it means they were probably listening. Christine, can you talk about, because you guys have a lot of different customers in a number of different towns up here, what was the customer response to all the new protocols? Were people patient? Did you change your tone over time to react to how people were responding?
Yeah, I think, I'm sure a lot of the businesses would agree too. I think there was this sort of grace period, right? We were all trying to figure it out at the same time, with, as many of us have already mentioned, with the guidelines changing slightly, with how many people could, sit at a table at any one time, or, all of those different things. So I think our guests appreciated it, both those that were even just getting takeout, they appreciated one day they'd get takeout and they could come in, the next day, I'm sorry, you have to we put a sign up outside, we'll bring it out to you. So, as I mentioned earlier, we adjusted as best we could, as quickly as we could, based on guidelines, but also just guest feedback. And I think they appreciated it, when we did reopen the hotels in June, we kind of laid out what our health and safety plan was. Again, our guests were appreciative of the time and effort that we took to lay it all out. And then again, once they did check in, and, I think it varies. It certainly varied between June of last year and then by the time we got to late summer, into the fall, we kind of had to just meet the guests where they were. Some were just completely wanting us to be hands off. We're so used to being, oh, I'll take your bags for you. Everyone leaves and gets a hug. And we're like, for us, it was like, wait, what do we do now? We were so used to being, so engaged with our guests throughout their stay. So, like I said, some were very, and are still very, apprehensive about dining indoors. Everyone opted outdoors, of course. And, while others just wanted the full 9, they wanted their rooms house kept daily. They wanted, everything kind of quote unquote normal. So we really just kind of let the guests lead and the experience, and kind of went with it, in keeping, of course, with the guidelines, but just, sort of reading what their comfort level was, and also what our comfort level of our staff was on site too. We didn't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable or doing anything that they didn't feel, that was appropriate. So, kind of a juggle between both our own teams and then as well as the guest.
Yeah, no, that's great. Emily, I know a lot of times when there's a potential financial panic on the line, which clearly hit everybody at the beginning of this thing, that companies, small businesses that don't spend a lot on marketing to begin with, maybe marketing is like the first thing that you cut. So kind of coming at this question from 2 angles, did you prioritize certain channels that you thought you would be most effective at a time like this? And were there reasons other than financial that you might have done that?
I think Definitely. Right in March and April, we basically halted, like Christine, all of our paid advertising. We tried to see what print ads we had secured already and see what could happen with those. And I think just for us, we needed the flexibility. And if we were doing paid advertising, we needed to see a return on investment. So basically any paid that we were spending, we spent on digital or social. So if we did have a 50-person dinner or we're putting advertising dollars behind the museum, we needed to see that those were in turn selling our tickets and getting people there. And I mean, it was really challenging. We wanted to have a presence and people see our billboards, but it's a hard cost and you have to evaluate that. And I think more than ever, we really understood the importance of public relations and communications, and maybe not necessarily influencer marketing, but just the influence that word of mouth has. And like Christine said about giving your guest a wonderful, safe, comforting experience is so much more valuable than a print ad, because they're going to tell their 5 friends or they're going to share that on their social media. So I think we definitely saw that with our light show too. People coming and feeling safe and having a fun family outing, and then telling their network about it was more beneficial to us than maybe a print ad or something that we couldn't measure. And I think in our planning for 2021, we've really had to look at a lot of that and try to balance what we're doing with the return.
That's great. Yeah,
Did that
actually,
answer it?
yeah, absolutely. And I actually had PR in my question because, I was wondering, it seemed like public relations played a bigger role for a lot of people during this time. It was also seemed like a safeguard when brands might have been called out fairly or unfairly if things went right or wrong, depending on the consumer's viewpoint. No, that's really good. And just the idea that the best advertisement was your experience. At a small business, we poured so much into customer service, not that I think we neglect that, but it was the only thing we could do, really. We were so uncertain financially. And that was the best feedback we got. People started trusting their experience with us. And I don't think that's something that takeaway doesn't just end when America's vaccinated. I think that's something that we realize is probably one of the most impactful parts of our business. And a lot of that's just hard work, which is good to know. It's a good takeaway. Danielle, I was reading, I'm not as much of an expert on this, but I was reading that marketing communications, specifically social media, there was more of a conversational and intimate tone. And it seemed like it had been going that way in the past, when people wanted brands to be a little bit more comfortable, intimate, true. But I was reading that took a big leap. Did you see that? And do you think that that's going to continue?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it more with national big brands than small, our small businesses. But I think it is going to continue. We are, listen, we all just experienced everything that we experienced. We can't unexperience it, right? We can't change that. So I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot of what we just went through and all the changes, like you were talking about, all the sanitary aspects of business, like these are going to stay with us. They're not going. And, social media, love it or hate it, is not going anywhere. It's just not going anywhere. So it's only going to expand. We're going to see new platforms. TikTok is amazing. Small businesses haven't jumped necessarily on that bandwagon yet, but that blew up. COVID made TikTok blow up. And, it went from a youth kind of app to adults using it. And now it's, I think it's one of the best social media platforms. Whether or not it's right for your business is a completely different story. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I don't want everybody to start TikTok accounts tomorrow, but it's connectivity, right? And social media wasn't built for businesses to advertise and market themselves. Social media was built for people to be social. So in times like civil unrest, or you have a global pandemic, we are able to connect with people all over the world and have these shared experiences and be talking to people like, what's happening in your country? This is what's happening in my country. So I think this is here to stay. And I think that brands, small businesses that can be a part of a conversation that's meaningful without, taking sides, polarizing anything. I'm also for standing up for what's right. So I don't mean that. I just mean that you have to be careful when you're a small business about the conversations that you have that get into that sticky, murky, gray area. But it's definitely here. It's here to stay. And I think that it's going to impact small businesses in the sense that we now feel like, for sure, that you all should be connected digitally and that we should be able to have a digital relationship with our favorite brands and businesses. I think that's a reality. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense, definitely. And just to add on to that, some of the data that I found was that video also just became a huge communication tool, even more so during pandemic, particularly distributed through social media channels. It definitely became a big tool for my businesses. And
30 seconds. I mean, that's all it really takes. You don't even need a minute anymore. 30 seconds to paint a picture. And especially, I think in the lodging and the entertainment industry, showing like, oh, this is your experience. And look, we all have masks on and everything's clean. I think that it's become a way to communicate visually with people, right?
Absolutely. Even down to goods and services, contracting, trying to find the best plumber around. People are using video a lot more even for that. It's just a more intimate way to meet the team rather than trying to compare a number of different brands that you just don't know online. So this is a broad question before we get to the Q&A for everybody, but I'd like all three panelists to answer it. It's kind of the big one. So the rest of the year, numbers are looking a little better. We're about to go into summer, but we're by no means past this. So we're in this kind of murky area of optimism, but a lot of us are still essentially locked down. What are your general, and Christine, I'll start with you. What's your general approach to marketing for the rest of the year? I imagine it's a bit different than last year. If you could talk on that, if that question's not too broad.
Yeah, and then I do want to go back to one point that Danielle made about TikTok. We're not, Foster Supply is not on TikTok, nor do I TikTok. I feel like an ancient person when I look at it, but I think there's a really important nugget over there. But I think for us, when Sims and Kirsten started this brand, I think experiential marketing, whether or not we called it that was always something that rang true for it. We wanted people to have space to breathe and explore the trails and go, do something that, again, off the screens and off their phones. So I think for us, we will continue to do that. Everyone, of course, wanted to be outdoors over the summer. And then we tried to figure out, okay, what could we do as the weather got cooler? So we quickly put together a winter cabana program for our guests to book, which did really well, wood stove and all. You can order different meal plans and everything like that. So I think we'll continue to play and have fun with things like that as we get into spring. Of course, myself included, we're all itching to have this snow melt and, be able to get back outside. And, I think we'll of course market the outdoors again, all of our custom trails and all of those things. I think Sullivan County in particular is very well positioned. And I think, generally speaking, of course, I don't want to speak for everyone, but this area I think fared pretty well. A guest could get in their car. They wouldn't have to get on a plane to get to us. Generally, they're coming from within 2 to 3 hours. So it was an easy getaway for them and they could feel like they were really away for a little bit. So I think, just programming different things is something we always do. To Emily's point about, looking at advertising, we still continue to look at that and even more so this year and what is really going to support what we're doing and what do we need to shift, what was relevant, a few months ago may not be relevant anymore. And should we just kind of rethink everything, right? You said it at the top, Kevin, that none of us were expecting this. So I think we try to just push ourselves and our teams to just look at everything with a fresh eye and, take some risks too, because I'm a firm believer that you can usually undo most of it if it doesn't work out. And especially with social, you just take it down. So, I think I definitely want our teams to kind of go into the rest of the year with that attitude of just experimenting. And if you have a great idea that we can execute easily, let's try it. So that, kind of programming. And then, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but one other thing that we started to do towards, the summer and later throughout the year was partnering with our amazing agency partner, The Door, with and dabbling in influencer marketing to kind of help spread the word, that power of the third party credibility. Again, if you are a brand that's interested in that, I would say, make sure you're partnering with the right people, and they should have the same values as you. They should, kind of get you and understand your brand. Don't just go after the person that has millions of followers, because your fans and their fans, truthfully, will see through that. So that's something that we'll continue to do throughout the rest of the year.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think your point of always having to be ready to change, as much as I'd like to take a break from words like nimble and agile and pivot just for a little while, I don't think we can, not in 2021. Emily, I imagine it's quite a different landscape at Bethel Woods this year. Can you talk about a little bit how you guys are planning differently from a marketing perspective?
Absolutely. I did want to add something about video as well. We haven't dabbled with TikTok in depth, but it's definitely on our plans. But we actually, when we canceled our season, we had a full letter written, and then 2 days before we made the decision to make a video. And we did that because we wanted Eric's voice, our CEO, to just seem authentic and compassionate. And I think through video, we were able to add music and B-roll, and it just made it so much more impactful and made people really see that we were sincerely upset and apologizing, basically, even though we had nothing to apologize for, for canceling the season. And I think through all of that, we just wanted to clearly lay out what was happening, what would happen with their tickets, what their options were, why we made this decision, etc. And then throughout the year, we did do a video series. Everything was created in-house, and it was called Adventures with Amber. And basically it was taking her through the different aspects that we were able to do. So they were 1 minute long videos. It was Amber going through the museum, getting her ticket, outside wearing a mask. It was Amber telling you exactly where Peace, Love, and Light started, telling you that our new augmented reality tour was outdoors and you could socially distance and do it whenever you wanted, and everything was fully sanitized. So I think some of those strategies just with social and video will continue, but that was me rambling. As far as our strategies for 2021, we're kind of looking at things, I would say, more quarterly. I think in the past, it's always been, we have to make sure our event brochure is printed and has all 22 concerts in every single event that we're having, so we can market it and sell a season lawn pass and sell our memberships and make sure every education program is filled. But right now we're focusing on March and April and what's happening then. We are opening our museum and launching our special exhibit. We're doing some virtual education programs and trying to work together with schools and just laying out exactly what our goals are and the strategies to get there. So it's not looking at necessarily a full year, it's looking at specifics and making sure we have a marketing plan to support them with an audience that we want to reach.
Awesome.
And I did want to add, I think one of your stats was just about acquiring new audiences, but I think something we learned is our own audience is really strong and they really like us, and what more can we do for them? And I think, Kevin, you definitely did this at Sunshine Colony, like with the lobster dinners. Like, you have a core audience and you knew that they would come and go to your dinner, so they sold out quickly. And Christine, the Cabanas are a perfect upsell for people who are already coming there. What more can you do and give them while they're at your facility? And then partnerships as well. You know, we worked with DVAA to do the outdoor film, and we had Liberty's graduation. I think it's just making yourself available for those opportunities. And something so special about Sullivan County is the partnerships and the sense of community here. So just really leaning into that a bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think making things, because let's be honest, it's a sad time. It's a really difficult time. So I think taking your existing customer and just trying to do something a little bit extra has meant a lot, definitely. And then Danielle, before we get to our questions from the audience, if you just want to talk about your perspective on how things look different for this year as opposed to last year.
I honestly think, for me, social media, it was just important as important last year as it is this year. I think this year is the year to get really serious about your digital footprint. I think it's the year to make sure that you have a really good website that's mobile friendly and moves people through the information that they need, not how fabulous you are. So looking at your wording, I think would be a good thing to do this year. Starting an email list. You don't own your social platforms. Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, they all go away tomorrow. If you had an email list, you could still communicate with your people. So I think that really, if you don't have one now, is definitely the time to start that. And just being intentional and mindful about the content that you put out. And just really staying up on your communications, make sure your Google My Business listing is up to date. That is where people are going when they are traveling, right? They're either going into social media, looking quick, or they're hopping onto Google. So that would be a really big one that most people just forget about. And then having those hours updated and all your policies, procedures. But I think that we're going to see that people are very excited to get out and about this summer, even more than they were last year. So, and partnerships, I think that is, one of the most brilliant things that you can do is find a like-minded business and work with them, because then you have even more power, especially if you're, not going to do those traditional forms of advertising, marketing. So.
Yeah, that's great. And, just to add on to that, my wife and I worked on our digital platforming this kind of quote off season, the winter, although the wine never stops, but we did create a web store that we were really surprised at how successful it was for delivery, shipping, and curbside pickup. And we were also really surprised that shipping really worked. We're in a smaller community up here, but people come in and out of our little towns and villages, and some of them end up falling in love with the shop. So I would recommend, if you can, web store has been really beneficial when we really needed it to be. With that, I think we should open it up to questions from everybody.
Hi, I'm Jackie Tooney. I'm with Combined Energy. I'm curious about the whole video thing. I am not interested in being in front of the camera. I've been in front of the camera when I was significantly younger, and it's not an appeal to me. I can write, I can put things together very well, but with the video, is it important for a quality video or just having something goofy out there that isn't as high quality? Because my biggest concern is you have, Premiere and all kinds of software that you can make stuff look a lot better, but is it the quality or the content?
I'm going to say it's the quality of the content.
Okay.
Good answer.
Right?
Yeah.
It's your
Oh,
sound.
absolutely.
It's not, I don't feel like Bethel Woods having a really well done video is different than a small business like yourself having, a commercialized video. But what can you share? You don't have to get on film, but do you have somebody who can get on film? And you can do it with your iPhone. You don't need to go into crazy production mode, because that's not, you're not trying to attract people from all over the planet to come to Bethel Woods, right? are trying to make sure that people know that you have service professionals who are going to show up in a mask and they're respectful and whatever whatever your selling points are. But I think that with an iPhone, make sure you clean your lens, make sure you have good sound. You just make a video and you put it out there and you try to see what works, and then you start creating. And if you decide you want to really commercialize video, then I would say, well, try to hire somebody who can help you with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as a small business that has no budget for video, and definitely we don't always want to be in the videos, we don't always feature ourselves. If we have new products, new wine, sometimes people just respond to movement online. So if you have, I think you want to make sure your lighting is good and, it's not too blurry and you're not walking too fast. But sometimes we'll just pan a couple of lines or a portion of the store that has a nice flower next to a bottle in the window, just to remind people that we're open today. And it's just a little bit catchier on the social media feed sometimes. So we don't need to invest too much.
We have done a little, ownership's children have taken some shots when they've been out at a customer's house, installing or testing equipment. And we do have access to professionally produced video, like how to, propane can do that, those kind of videos. But it's the short 15-second shots that I think are really interesting, and it's what you want to hook. It's a hook to get them to come back to your site, and I think that's something we all need to do a little bit more. Everybody has become so visual, and the pandemic, like you all said, it's a connection. You're seeing somebody on video that you might not see in person. So I really think we need to make that more important. And TikTok, I'm way beyond TikTok age.
I would
Age
also
is
add,
just a number, people. Age is just a number.
I think it's also important to utilize other people in your organization that you might not expect. Like I know Christine said something about working cross-departmentally, like maybe there is a service provider who has a nice phone and likes to take images. I know for us, a few guys on our grounds crew will always send me in the morning the historic Woodstock field with a snow covering. Kelly used to be my expert monument photographer, but utilizing other people in your organization that might have a different perspective on content or be a little more savvy. It definitely doesn't need to be professional. I think it's just their experience and however they choose to tell that story.
Yeah, and if I may just add on a little bit more to that too, I think, to your question about how polished, it needs to be, I think there's certainly a time and place for that. But yeah, as long as it's not blurry and everyone can see everything clearly, I think people appreciate a little bit of grit every now and then. I think, to the point of TikTok that we keep talking about TikTok, they're doing so well because they're not as polished as Instagram from a content perspective. They seek out the creators on the platform that don't have 1 million followers, but people that have really fun ideas. I think something we played around with was just sort of how-to videos and different yoga videos with our wellness coordinator, a how-to video with our director of garden. So I think, even for combined energy services, there's always some sort of content. It doesn't matter what your brand is. I think, there's so many new neighbors that we have here. When I first moved here, I had no idea what propane was versus this versus that. Like I never had to worry about that where I lived. So, I think even just here's the 10 things you need to know while you're looking for a house or something like that. I think people appreciate just that quick informational, those informational videos too. And, you can always use stories. We use stories all the time for stuff that's not super polished because it's quick and it's effective and, people seem to engage with it. So.
Awesome. Great question. There's a really good question coming in from Louisa on the chat. We're talking about all the benefits of these tech innovations, but what about the potential alienation of customers or job loss? So her her statement in question is self-checkout was happening at Walmart pre-pandemic. And I asked staff at the time if they were worried about job loss. At the time, they didn't. Now they are. I've noticed smaller establishments have come on board, dollar store. As for food delivery, aren't costs too high for the average family, regardless of marketing? I would just say that this is probably skewed a little bit towards smaller businesses, maybe not Walmart's, where I do think that self-checkout can lead to job loss. I'm definitely not enough of an expert to talk about that. But it is making me think we didn't have as big a voice about bigger companies. As someone that did delivery during COVID, we did it temporarily and didn't raise our prices. Which didn't help us all either, because we were just kind of exhausted. We were just looking at ways, and especially in the beginning, to survive. So we couldn't actually make the delivery model work for the sanity of our staff. So that was, on a smaller perspective, we had to walk away from it because it would increase costs. I don't know if anyone else has dealt with that. Okay.
Not directly, but I do think that even if you are a brand that's looking to expand on something like delivery or something like that, I don't think you can ever take away from the, human connection and that experience. I don't remember which fast food restaurant it was, but I want to say it was maybe Taco Bell. I don't know. I'm a big fan of looking outside completely of your industry for inspiration, but they were seeing another competitor delivering pizzas that were just horrible. So then they went and turned their taco or whatever it was into a taco pizza and then delivered that. I think there's ways to get creative and still form that connection with your consumer, even if you need to automate some things just to make your business a little bit more efficient. There's lots of different ways to be creative.
Great. A good question here for the nuts and bolts of how this all works from Into Retro, which is a very cool store that I like. Antique store near Bethel Woods. We are traditional brick and mortar and shifted entirely to e-commerce since COVID. We've been trying to use Facebook and Instagram and MailChimp, but our growth has not been very robust. How can we increase sales? Should we try competing as a national brand instead of a seasonal shop? Question for the panel. I'll put that to my other panelists.
Go ahead, Emily. I feel like you're going to say something.
I just wanted to add, I think I don't exactly have the answer for you, but I did want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing for our Explore the 60s program. Traditionally, it's a museum field trip program. And obviously with that, there's a radius about who we can attract. So a month or two ago, we now made it a virtual platform where realistically it could be national. So I think with that, what we're looking to do is change some of our SEO words to make it lessons of Woodstock, educator resources. And I think you could probably use that to your advantage, whether it's antique store with unique items, or just kind of shifting that language where you could have a broader reach without necessarily putting a lot of advertising dollars into it. And I think, again, PR would be super important. Like for us, we're looking at pitching Scholastic and their educator resources, or publications like Mommy Poppins, that's a mommy blog. What niche outlets can you latch onto that might give you a wider reach, or people that you wouldn't normally attract with little cost?
This is kind of where I see really targeted Google ads could help without spending a lot of money. Use your demographic information. Like somebody said earlier, use your email lists to build a target for your online store and really get down to the nitty gritty. Google ads are not something that everybody can do themselves, but if you're looking to try and expand your market, say to Manhattan, to Long Island, to get people that might be interested in redoing their homes and want antiques or a retro piece, I think it might be worth the investment to work with somebody to get some of that Google advertising out there.
I totally agree with that. As a brick and mortar who started doing a more e-commerce. We just didn't spend money on things like digital advertising at all, or PR in the past. We are planning to this year because we saw that there was a market for e-commerce that we didn't understand was out there. And now we're going to put not a lot of money like Google ads, but we're going to put some money around it in targeted areas. Yeah, very good point.
I'm just going to jump in with my 2 cents because I think this can be helpful to a lot of people. Before you go down the path of really starting to invest a lot of money into something like Google ads, I think Google ads are great. Even Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all of those are great and will bring you business, but you have to make sure that your website is exactly how it needs to be. You have to make sure it's mobile friendly. You have to make sure your wording is correct, because if you spend money and you dump somebody onto a page that isn't mobile friendly and is really hard to navigate through, you're just they're gonna leave, right? They're not gonna have that good experience. They're gonna be like, where am I? So Amy, I have no idea what your website looks like, but I'm just saying this in general for everybody. And then, something like when you're such a little shop, if you can do something like embrace live shopping so that you can get your people who are used to coming into your business and who love you to like engage with you in that way of like, oh, I want that. I want that right now. Yes, I'll take it. Sold. So I think that there are a lot of things to do, but I think that before you really invest that money, you have to make sure that, you're checking off those few boxes so that you're not wasting your money when you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just add to a couple points to what Danielle just said. We finally launched gift cards, a couple of months back, and, we did a lot. Well, we don't have necessarily a formalized fulfillment center. It's still like our team members boxing it up and sending it out to people. We made sure that functionality and the kind of the process through which, someone would buy one was seamless. And just so they wouldn't get frustrated. It's something that, much larger companies, it's super easy to get a gift card, but for us, it was something that we kind of needed to work through. And to the point that was the exact point I was going to make, was about live shopping. We've definitely, we have some retail at all of our hotels. And we started to kind of promote those items through Instagram. And, we've gotten some sales through that. While it's not a ton through social, it definitely does something. And one thing I'd suggest, maybe it's, I don't know if anyone knows it, but it's a shop that used to be in Brooklyn called Fox and Fawn. She has a big presence on social media, Instagram specifically, and she sells everything through her feed. So take a look at that. Might be good inspiration of just trying out a different way of selling while, people might not be yet going into the store again, but they could just, buy it through Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, Fox and Fawn is a good example of that. And one last question. I think we have time for one more. And Heinrich has one from the chat that I think is very helpful. Another nuts and bolts question. What's the digital footprint to have in 2021? What must you have? What's nice to have? Danielle, if we want to start with you, probably.
Sure. I think you need to have an Instagram and Facebook presence, and Google My Business, I think, is non-negotiable. And a website and an email. Don't go creating other accounts unless you specifically know that you have a strategy and what your goals are going to be for those accounts. So if somebody says to me, Twitter, that's not where the conversation is happening. That's not where people are going for local small business information. So if you want to be on Twitter, you have to carry out that conversation, and that's a completely different strategy than posting to Facebook or Instagram. Same thing with Pinterest. All these tools can be used and, leveraged to your advantage, but you have to know why you're using them, and they have to be the right fit for your business. So you don't need to be everywhere, but most small businesses, the majority, I would say, need to be on Instagram, Facebook, Google My Business, website, email. Those would be the top 5 places that I would say.
Anything to add, Christine or Emily, on that one?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Danielle. I think, even me personally, I
We might have had our first freezing.
Instagram before
I think you're freezing up just a little, Christine.
and goal to see how,
I heard some words in there, Instagram. So.
make sure you operate our Instagram bio. Oh, yikes!
Well, that's not
Okay.
bad to only have one
Not hear
free.
me. I'll stop moving so I don't have that weird.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you so much, Danielle, Emily, and Christine for joining today. I was thinking about potential further training and development opportunities, little breakout groups that came from topics today. Maybe there's something we could do on video, some of the other things that we talked about. Thank you very much, Jamie, for hosting.
Well, thank you. Thank you. This was very informative and very exciting. I look forward to having more sessions like this. And again, thank you all for attending. This will be up on our website at catskills.com/webinars. It should be up later on today. And thank you all for attending. Have a
Thank
great day.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Take care.